Well, this evening, as I was thinking of the fact that today is Christmas, that I should give a message that has to do with Christmas. And I thought of this question: should Christians celebrate Christmas? And we're going to look at questions, different questions, and then inspired answers. In the Christmas story, we have evidence of the giving of gifts. And you're familiar with it, Matthew 2, verses 1 and 2. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him." Now we're going to notice something as we go through these different questions. The Bible presents the proper method of worship, the proper method of keeping Christmas. And the focus of that event was the worship of Jesus. We know the shepherds came, and here the wise men came. They weren't even Jews, they were heathen men, but they came to worship Jesus. And when they came, in verse 11, Matthew 2, it says, "And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts." And notice the gifts they gave: gold and frankincense and myrrh. Now there's some interesting points in that verse. Jesus was no longer a real small baby. He was now a child. And notice he was not in the manger. He was in the house. So some time had gone by, and they saw that star on the night that the shepherds saw the star, but it took them a while to get there. And so we don't know exactly how long it was before they arrived, but there was a little time that went by. And yet, the main reason we bring up this part of the story is that they understood that the proper thing to do on Christmas was to give presents to Jesus. By the way, those presents supplied their stay down in Egypt, where they weren't able to earn any money, but they had to go there until the death of Herod. And so this was very important gifts that were given to Jesus. The first question: why don't we know Jesus' birthday? I'm sure you're aware that he wasn't born on Christmas Day that we celebrate, December 25. He wasn't born on that day. In fact, different people, I've heard different stories, but the one that makes the most sense to me is that he was probably born in late September or early October, because the shepherds didn't stay in the fields after that. It got too difficult for them to stay there. I heard someone talk about April, but I don't think that's possible, that he was born in April. But I'm sure a lot of people wish they could tell the exact time and know exactly when his birthday was. But there's a good reason. We see in the Bible why he didn't give us the date of his birth. In Matthew 23, 29 and 30, And Jesus is talking to the scribes, but what he's doing is describing the way human nature is. It says, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because ye build the tombs of the prophets and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous, and say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets." Well, if you analyze that verse, what Jesus is saying is that you make a big deal about the place where this prophet was buried. But your forefathers killed that same prophet. And by suggestion, he's saying, if you had lived back then, you would have killed that prophet. And here you are making a big deal about where they're buried. And so God knew it wasn't best for us to either know the burial place. You know, think they've figured out over there in Israel where he was buried, but a lot of the things they tell you about what happened where, they're not true. And so, especially the day is not known. In verse 31 is where he makes it clear that he's actually accusing them of being guilty of doing the same thing. He knows they're going to crucify him, which was the greatest prophet and more than a prophet. This from the New International Version, it's a little clearer. So, you testify against yourselves by this way of handling the grave sites. So you testify against yourself that you are the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. And Stephen later on, he accused the Jews, is there any prophet that you did not persecute? No, there's not even one. And especially Jesus. And so human nature tends to be this way. Apart from the infilling of the Holy Spirit, that's what we do. We honor the people that we know are good people, but we don't do what they did or we don't do what they say. That's the tendency of human nature. Desire of Ages 6:18 says, many follow in the track of the Pharisees. They revere those who have died for their faith. They wonder at the blindness of the Jews in rejecting Christ. But when obedience to God requires self-denial and humiliation, these very persons stifle their convictions and refuse obedience. Thus they manifest the same spirit as did the Pharisees whom Christ condemned. And by the way, I don't know whether you've paid attention to it, but we have done the same thing with the places where Ellen White lived and with all that we know about where she was and what she did. We make a big deal about all these places, and I'm not saying it can't be a blessing to visit those places, but then we turn around and we don't do what God directed her to tell us to do. What are we doing? The same thing that the Pharisees did. This is human nature. And so it's better that we don't know so much, especially about Jesus, because he would get the most, wouldn't he? An example is given that I think clarifies why we don't know when Jesus was born. Adventist Home 477, in his wisdom the Lord concealed the place where he buried Moses. God buried him, and God resurrected him and took him to heaven. This secrecy was to prevent what? Idolatry. He against whom they rebelled while he was in active service whom they provoked almost beyond human endurance, was almost worshipped as God after his separation from them by death. For the very same purpose, he has concealed the precise day of Christ's birth, that the day should not receive the honor that should be given to Christ as the Redeemer of the world. One to be received, to be trusted, to be relied on, as he who could save to the uttermost all who come unto him. So why didn't God give us the date of his birth? Because he knew that most of us, hopefully not all, but most of us would worship him at least the day, but we wouldn't really allow him to do in our lives what he wants to do. And so he kept it in secrecy. And so human beings have picked a day to celebrate, and they do the same thing anyway, even though they don't know that that was the day that, Jesus, well, most people know it wasn't the day that he was born. Next question. Is it wrong to celebrate Christmas since it is from a pagan origin? And I hear this frequently among what you might call conservative Adventists, people that are very concerned about this type of things. Is it wrong to celebrate Christmas since it is from a pagan origin? Well, most of the things do come from a pagan origin. There's no question about it. Christmas tree, various other aspects of it, they all come from paganism. But, we got to be careful getting answers that are not inspired answers. In Adventist Home 478, you will find it a difficult matter to pass over this period, talking about Christmas, without giving it some attention. Then it adds this: it can be made to serve a very good purpose. Now, if you put that together with the reasoning that some people have, it doesn't hold water. Just because it came from pagan origin and different things that are done on Christmas Day doesn't mean that we have to not observe it, because it can be made to serve a very good purpose. However, I'm not sure that very many people have a good understanding of how to do that. So some of the questions are going to address, how do we make Christmas serve a very good purpose? Here's an interesting one from Review and Herald of December 9, 1890, and it's Article A, Paragraph 4. If Christmas is kept at all, so that means we don't have to keep Christmas, right? If it's kept at all, it should be kept in a way that will be in harmony with its significance. So here's a little bit of how we are to keep Christmas, if we do, in harmony with the real significance of his birth. Christ should be remembered, his name honored. So I'm thankful we have this meeting tonight, because at least tonight we're going to honor his name. From Counsels to the Church, page 159. I have said to my family and my friends, I desire that no one shall make me a birthday or Christmas gift. Now, I wouldn't apply that strongly to Wildwood, because many people here need a little boost now and then. And so I don't think we need to say what Ellen White said, all of us anyway. Some could maybe, but not all of us. Christmas is a time that God, and birthday, when God chooses to help us with some of our needs. But this is her own testimony. I have said to my family and my friends, I desire that no one shall make me a birthday or Christmas gift unless it be with permission to pass it on into the Lord's treasury. So she's saying, if you give it to me, I'll probably give it away, to be appropriated in the establishment of missions. So here's one of the things that should receive our attention on Christmas, if we're going to celebrate it, that we do something to advance missions. Next question, is it okay to have a Christmas tree? Since that comes from paganism, should we never have a Christmas tree? Adventist Home 482, letters of inquiry have come to us asking, shall we have a Christmas tree? So different Adventists were writing to Ellen White and saying, is it okay for us to have a Christmas tree? Will it not be like the world? Let me put a qualifier on here. I believe from the small amount of information we have that there's a right way to use a Christmas tree and a wrong way. And the more we practice what the world practices with the Christmas tree, the more harmful it becomes. So we want to understand how we're supposed to use the Christmas tree if we use it. People said, will it not be like the world? We answer, you can make it like the world if you have a disposition to do so, or you can make it as unlike the world as possible. So apparently that should be our objective. If we're going to have a Christmas tree, to make it as unlike the world as possible. There is no particular sin in selecting a fragrant evergreen and placing it in our churches, but the sin lies in the motive which prompts to action. In other words, why are we doing this? And the use which is made of the gifts placed upon the tree. So two issues have to be considered. What is our motive of having one? Are we trying to copy the world? Are we trying to decorate it in the same way the world decorates it and do what the world's doing? Is that our motive? Or do we want to make this tree another way of raising funds to advance God's cause? And also in Adventist Home 482, it says, let not the parents take the position that an evergreen placed in the church for the amusement of the Sabbath school scholars is a sin. So we need to be, if someone puts one in, we don't want to criticize just because the tree is there. For it may be made a great blessing. Keep before their minds benevolent objects. So the purpose of the tree is not to give gifts to everybody, but to do something to thank Jesus for the greatest gift that has ever been given. Now again, if there are poor people that need something, that's certainly part of what Jesus wants to be done. Also, same page says, let its boughs be laden with the golden and silver fruit of your beneficence. It's interesting. Most people hang golden balls and different things, silver things. But she uses the same words but talks about putting funds on the tree and present this to him as your Christmas gift. Let your donations be sanctified by prayer. So we don't stop just with giving. Instead, we pray that these funds can be a blessing to people, and God will direct it to be a great blessing to those that need it. Well, a little more. How should we celebrate Christmas? We've seen already that we ought to focus on Jesus. Adventist Home 480, Christ should be the supreme object. But as Christmas has been observed, the glory is turned from him to mortal man. So the world celebrates it the exact opposite of the way it's supposed to be celebrated if we do. And it seems from, deducting from some here, we might do more about Christmas when we have children than when we don't. And when we're older, then we do more to advance God's cause with Christmas. So as we look at the two options, whether we're going to make people be built up and, make it a thing that focuses on man, that we as Seventh-day Adventists are to make it focus on Jesus, and to not only ourselves but our children to grow up realizing Christmas is a day to focus on Jesus, not on us. Also, Adventist Home 478, parents can control this matter by turning the minds and the offerings of their children to God and his cause and the salvation of souls. So here's a big way to celebrate Christmas, the birth date of Jesus. And also page 480, by the world the holidays are spent in frivolity and extravagance. So, we usually have a day off. This year, gatherings have been kind of hindered to some degree. But often people want to get together and have a great old time, have frivolity and extravagance, like a banquet, and we eat way too much and all kinds of things. That's the way the world celebrates it. But this is not the way God's people are to celebrate. By the world, the holidays are spent in frivolity and extravagance, gluttony and display. I'm sure you've seen some of the houses as you go down the road. The amount that they spend on lights, tremendous display. Thousands of dollars will be worse than thrown away upon the coming Christmas and New Year's in needless indulgences. So yes, we are to not forget about the birth of Jesus, and since the world is thinking about the birth of Jesus, it's okay if we do, but we need to do it the way God suggested or asked us to do it. Also, it should be a reminder of Isaiah 58:6. Is not this the fast that I have chosen? To loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that ye break every yoke. That's the work that God has given to us. And we can do it in many, many different ways. Taking care of the needy, preaching the gospel, any way of relieving sickness or helping mankind, or helping our brothers and sisters who are in need. This is the way in which we are to celebrate the birth of Jesus and many other things. Adventist Home 478, their desire to make gifts may be turned into pure and holy channels and made to result in good to our fellow men by supplying the treasury and the great grand work for which Christ came into our world. So the treasury is needing funds to help. There are many needs in our world today, and I believe that's going to skyrocket. Just with COVID alone, there are more people over this earth that are in desperate straits and need help. Also, page 482, Christmas and New Year celebrations can and should be held in behalf of those who are helpless. So there are people that they don't have a job maybe, or they have an illness that prohibits them from being able to have what they need. And so this is a great time to do something for them. God is glorified when we give to help those who have large families to support. Now, some people would say they shouldn't have had so many children. Well, that might be true, but they're here now, and so they need help. Those children deserve to have, food and clothes and have their needs met. And so the Christmas time is the time to really think about that. Should we give gifts to each other? From what we've read already, you might think, well, we just shouldn't give each other anything and just give it all to advance God's work. From Adventist Home 479, it is right to bestow upon one another tokens of love and remembrance if we do not in this forget God, our best friend. It's kind of like saying we shouldn't spend most of our money on our friends, but we should remember God, and then it's fine to do something for those. However, this is just a practical suggestion. There's people that really don't need anything. There's no point in giving them much. I mean, might want to give them something very simple to let them know you think about them. But, the struggle to figure out what in the world can we give somebody, if it's that hard to give them something, probably somebody else needs it worse. We should make our gifts such as will prove a real benefit to the receiver. That's the principle. In other words, why give something to somebody they don't need and they're trying to figure out what to do with it? They're embarrassed to tell you they don't need it or give it back to you, or they're even afraid to take it back to the store because you might find out they took it back. So let's stop it on the other end of making sure that our gifts are going to be a real benefit to the receiver. I would recommend such books as will be an aid in understanding the Word of God. So there's one of the areas that can be a tremendous blessing to those that need it. Others, they can buy all the books they need, but those that may be in need. Adventist Home 478 and 9, it is pleasant to receive a gift, however small, from those we love. It is an assurance that we are not forgotten and seems to bind us to them a little closer. So we can't say it would be wrong to give gifts, but you'll notice they're to be small gifts, not big gifts, compared to what we do for Jesus. Same book, page 481, there are many things which can be divided with taste and cost far less than the unnecessary presents that are so frequently bestowed. So there's another important thing to consider. And page 480, brethren and sisters, while you are devising gifts, maybe the word divided is, I might have typed that wrong. Maybe it was supposed to be devised. That which can be devised with taste and cost far less than the unnecessary presents that are so frequently bestowed. There's another evidence that we're not really supposed to give gifts that aren't needed to people. Brethren and sisters, while you are devising gifts for one another, I would remind you of our heavenly friend, lest you should be unmindful of his claims. So, number one person to consider is Jesus. And one of the most wonderful thoughts in the Bible is that whenever we help one of God's children, he considers that we helped him. And if we think about that, it makes it easy to help those that are in need. Adventist Home 483, let there be recorded in the heavenly books such a Christmas as has never yet been seen, because of the donations which shall be given for the sustaining of the work of God and the upbuilding of his kingdom. As I was preparing this message, I thought, it's too bad I didn't give this in November. But I didn't think about it till now. So you probably can't practice all of this till next year. But be sure you remember this for next year. How can I make the change in my home? Some of you might realize, well, we didn't practice Christmas this way this year. So how can I make that change in my home? Adventist Home 481, you can teach your children a lesson while you explain to them the reason why you have made a change in the value of their presence, telling them that you are convinced that you have hitherto considered their pleasure more than the glory of God. So we have to have a family council, and we have to confess our mistake and explain to them why next time they're going to receive a smaller gift, and tell them what we're going to do with the extra money. Now, if they have need, that's a different story, of course. Some children need clothes, and Christmas time they can get those and other things. Tell them that you have thought more of your own pleasure and of their gratification and of keeping in harmony with the customs and traditions of the world in making presents to those who did not need them than you have of advancing the cause of God. Just think of what happens. A child goes to school after Christmas and all the other children want to know, what'd you get for Christmas? And our child needs to be able to say, well, this Christmas we gave most of our money to Jesus, to advance his cause and his work on earth. Wouldn't that be a good answer to give? They might be made fun of because if the other children are not thinking the same way, they might make fun of it. But, we can't help that. So it's interesting that we've even been told how we can make a change once we wake up to how much we're practicing Christmas the way the world practices it. So as you think this over, I hope for next year it'll be a blessing, and that your Christmas will be even better next year than this year, and that we to practice this, we have to start looking ahead of time for those that may be in need. There's always people in need here at Wildwood. Keep your ears open for people that you can tell are in need, and that's a good time to do something for them. And then there's people outside the institution, and then there's God's work in general that needs to have all the money it can get. In fact, I believe as we continue to get closer to the end of time, we really have got to find a way to put everything we can possibly spare into God's work, because it's going to take it to finish the work, and the work is going to be harder to finish than it ever has been, and therefore its needs are going to grow and advance. And to learn how to live on just what we really need to live on, and put all that we can to advance His cause. And that will bring the most happiness to anyone that practices Christmas and birthdays and any other day, that's special this way. And isn't it good that God has helped us to understand we don't go in the ditch on this direction and say, well, we're just not even going to act as though Christmas is here. We're just going to ignore it. And from the other ditch of practicing Christmas like the world. God has been good to give us this information, and may we benefit fully from it.